In some other news, despite the Supreme Court's order, protesters have continuously barred the entry of women into Sabarimala.
The Sabarimala issue against the entry of women continues to make headlines.
Kerala's Sabarimala Temple, an ancient shrine shrouded in devotion, mystery, and more recently, fiery controversy. But what if I told you that this isn't just about a temple or its traditions? What if I told you that this saga exposes deeper cracks in our society, where faith clashes with law, where centuries-old practices are challenged by modern ideals, and where politics and media fuel a fire that has consumed the nation? This isn't just a story about Sabarimala. It's a story about power, belief, and the battle of equality in the face of resistance. To understand the storm that engulfed Sabarimala, we have to go back to the roots steeped in tradition and religious sentiment. For centuries, the temple dedicated to Lord Ayyappa has stood as a symbol of devotion for millions. But unlike other temples, Sabarimala has a unique practice. It restricts entry to women between the ages of 10 and 50, citing the celibate nature of the deity. Devotees argue that this isn't discrimination. It's faith, a sacred oath to protect the sanctity of Lord Ayyappa. But in 1991, this tradition was legally cemented when the Kerala High Court ruled in favor of the ban, stating that it was essential to preserve the temple's customs. For decades, this decision stood unchallenged, quietly accepted by most, until everything changed in 2018. It was a judgment that shook the nation. The Supreme Court of India, in a groundbreaking verdict, declared the ban unconstitutional, citing it as a violation of gender equality under the Indian Constitution. But what made this judgment even more significant was the split within the Supreme Court's bench. While 4 justices backed the verdict, one justice, Indu Malhotra, opposed it. Her words echoed the sentiments of millions of devotees. I'll tell you what her words was. Religious practices cannot be solely tested on the basis of equality. This single line became a rallying cry for those who saw the judgment as an intrusion into their faith. And as the news spread, the nation erupted, not with the celebration, but with outrage. The streets of Kerala transformed into battlegrounds. Devotees, clad in black and carrying their sacred irumudi, abandoned the chants of devotion and took up slogans of defiance. For them, this was no longer just about entering a temple. It was an assault on their beliefs, their traditions, their identity. Women, men, and even children marched in protest, forming human chains that stretched for kilometers. They claimed they weren't fighting against equality but defending a divine principle, a practice they had followed for centuries without question. But let's pause here. Was this really just about faith? Or was something more suspicious at play? As protests intensified, political parties began to circle like vultures over the battlefield. The Bharatiya Janata Party threw its weight behind the devotees, branding the ruling Left Democratic Front government as anti-Hindu. The LDF in turn stood firm on its decision to uphold the Supreme Court's ruling, insisting that they were committed to constitutional values. What followed was a carefully orchestrated power play, where devotion became a weapon and the people a mere pawn. And then came the media, ready to feast on the chaos. Every channel, every anchor seemed to pick a side. What could have been an opportunity for meaningful dialogue turned into a spectacle of shouting matches and sensationalism. Headlines screamed of betrayal, purification rituals, and clashes at dawn. But in the middle of this noise, one crucial detail went missing: the voices of women who dared to challenge the norm. On January 2nd, 2019, Bindu Ammini and Kanakadurga did what no one thought was possible. With full police protection, and in the middle of a storm of opposition, they have entered the temple, marking a historic first. But what followed was nothing short of chaos. The temple was immediately closed for purification rituals, and Kerala saw an unprecedented wave of unrest. The women became target of threats both online and offline, their lives uprooted for daring to step into what many still call forbidden ground. The irony here is glaring. On one hand, we pride ourselves on being the world's largest democracy, a nation that guarantees equality under its constitution. But on the other, we are willing to ostracize and vilify those who test that very principle. And so the question arises, who really holds the power in this history? Is it the courts who interpret the law? The devotees who claim the ownership of faith? Or the politicians who exploit both to further their agendas? As the protest raged, the story reached the Supreme Court once again in 2019. The bench, no larger, agreed to review its own 2018 verdict, a rare and telling decision. But even as the legal battle continues, the societal battle remains far from resolved. While some call this a victory for equality, others see it as an erosion of faith. And in the middle of conflict stand millions of women caught between their rights and the weight of tradition. The protests, the courtrooms, the media spectacles, these were the visible parts of the Sabarimala controversy. But as with any issue that grips a nation, the real story often lies beneath the surface. Let's talk about the quieter battles, the ripple effects that may not have made the headlines but are just as significant. First, the impact on Kerala's communities. For many, Sabarimala isn't just a temple, it's an economic lifeline. Every pilgrimage season brings thousands of devotees and with them, a boost to local businesses, small shops, eaters, transport services and more. But the protests and unrest disrupted this ecosystem. Reports of declining pilgrim numbers began to emerge as uncertainty and fear kept many away. For those who relied on the pilgrimage of their livelihood, this wasn't just a cultural conflict, it was an economic crisis. And then there is the psychological toll on those at the center of the storm. Think about the two women, Bindu Ammini and Kanakadurga, who made history by entering the temple. While some hailed them as heroes, others condemned them as villains. Their lives was upended overnight. They faced threats, ostracism, and even violence, all for taking a step that was both personal and political. These aren't just abstract names in a story. They are real people who bore the weight of a nation's anger and hope. But here is where it gets even more thought-provoking. What does the Sabarimala case mean for other religious practices in India? Across the country, there are countless temples, mosques, and churches with their own traditions and restrictions. The Sabarimala verdict has set a thought that could ripple through every corner of the country. If the court can intervene here, what's stopping similar challenges to other practices? And if they don't intervene, what does that say about the promise of equality written in the constitution? And then, there is the global context. The Sabarimala's debate isn't unique to India. It mirrors struggles around the world where tradition and modernity collide. In Saudi Arabia, women fought for the right to drive. In the Vatican, debates rage about the role of women in the clergy. These battles may seem worlds apart, but they share a common thread: the tension between maintaining sacred traditions and embracing the evolving ideals of equality and justice. What's happening in Sabarimala is part of a larger global story about how societies grapple with change. So as we peel back the layers of this controversy, one thing becomes clear: this isn't just about faith or law. It's about power, who holds it, who challenges it, and what happens when the two collide. The Sabarimala Temple controversy has forced India to confront its own contradictions. We are a nation that prides itself on being modern and progressive, yet we are deeply rooted in traditions that often resist that progress. This isn't just about resolving a legal battle or legal dispute, claiming a few protests. It's about deciding who we are as a society and how far we are willing to go to uphold the ideals we claim to cherish. The story of Sabarimala is far from over. The legal battles will continue, the protests may reignite, and the voices, both for and against, will keep echoing. But the true resolution lies not in our courtrooms or demonstrations, but in the conversations we have as a society. Can we respect our tradition without compromising equality? Can we protect faith without undermining the constitution? These aren't easy questions, but they are the ones we must face if we are to move forward. Because in the end, this isn't just a story about Sabarimala, it's a story about us. And so, we come to the heart of the matter. What happens next? The Sabarimala Temple controversy isn't just about revisiting past decisions or reinterpreting age-old practices. It's about shaping the future of India's relationship with faith, equality, and governance. But what to do the next steps look like, and what lessons we can draw from this saga? For one, the legal system will undoubtedly play a central role. The Supreme Court's decision to review its own 2018 judgment speaks volume about the complexity of this issue. But legal verdicts, as powerful as they are, cannot erase centuries of belief or heal the divides that have deepened over the years. Laws can be written and rewritten, but they cannot force societal change overnight. The change must come from within through dialogue, education, and collective willingness to understand the perspectiveness of others. And then there is the role of the people. Whether it's the devotees who feel their faith has been attacked or the activists who see this as a fight for justice, the real power lies with them. It's easy to get lost in the chaos of protests and outrage, but beneath it all, there is a common thread, a desire for dignity, respect, and recognition. The question is, can these voices find a way to coexist? Can we create a society where tradition and equality don't have to be at odds? Where one doesn't have to be sacrificed for the other? The political and media landscapes will also need to evolve. As long as issues like Sabarimala are treated as opportunities for point scoring or sensationalism, the true essence of the debate will remain obscured. This isn't about left versus right or modernity versus tradition. It's about finding right balance in a world that often pulls us to extremes. Politicians and the media have a responsibility to elevate the conversation, not exploit it. Finally, we must ask ourselves as individuals, what do we want this story to represent? Is it just a chapter in India's history? Or is it a turning point? The Sabarimala controversy is a reminder of the contradictions we live with every day, the push and pull between who we are and who we want to be. It's a story of resilience, defiance, and above all, hope. Hope that one day we can find a way to honor our past without compromising our future. As the dust settles and the echoes of this controversy fade, one thing is certain: the legacy of Sabarimala will not be written in courtrooms or protest grounds. It will be written in the minds and hearts of people. Those who dare to question, those who choose to listen, and those who strive to find harmony in a world of conflict. This isn't end of the story, it's just the beginning. And so, the story of Sabarimala remains unfinished, an ever-evolving dialogue between faith and equality, tradition and progress. What we have uncovered is not just the tale of temple, but the reflection of a society standing at a crossroads, trying to reconcile its deeply rooted beliefs with the ideals of justice and inclusivity. The question isn't about Sabarimala, it's about every space, every tradition, and every institution that shapes who we are and what we stand for as a nation. As we leave you with this story, we invite you to think deeply about the questions it raises. Can we truly honor our past without addressing its flaws? Can we move forward without listening to every voice, even those we disagree with? These aren't easy questions, but they are worth asking, because they don't just define this controversy, they define us. If this journey through Sabarimala Temple controversy has made you think, question, or feel something new, we have done our job. And if you want more content that dives deep into untold stories, hidden truths, and thought-provoking narratives, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can continue exploring the unexplored, one story at a time. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.